Half a day, KUAM. I'm Adriana Cotero, and I am joined today with CNMI lawmakers that are part of the minority members group. We have Representative Ed Probst, who is the minority leader, waving at us right there. We also have Representative Tina Sablan, and we have Representative Sheila Babauta. Sorry, Sheila Babauta. Hi, thank you all for coming on here. So I really want to discuss the financial crises and the economy downfalls in the CNMI, as I know that you guys recently placed an Open Government Act at the beginning of the year in regards to the Community Benefit Fund, and you received a response. And right now, as we're dealing with the pandemic and there's all these cuts happening as far as the government goes in the CNMI, that Community Benefit Fund essentially would come into aid during a time like this. So I wanted to do something more long form, which is hence the interview, and I wanted to let the people know from you guys what it is that the response that you received. So I'm going to first start off with giving some background information, and then near the end, if there's anything that you want to add to that background information, please do, and correct me by any means if I missed anything or forgot anything or messed up on anything, please. So with that being said, just to say the cases that we know on the CNMI to date, there are 11 confirmed cases in the CNMI. There are 2 deaths reported, and there are still specimen results pending. And that first case was reported on March 28th. Now, while, as I said, that, you know, the pandemic, it's global, it's amidst all of us right now, but there has been some financial concerns within the CNMI since Super Typhoon Yutu hit, and even dating back from 2015 when Typhoon Cotero had hit. So just for up-to-date information, this the following week after that first case was reported, the governor had announced there would be a 50% cut in furlough action in order to reduce government personnel costs. So Governor Ralph Torres directed all department heads to determine positions up for termination. And then just last week, Governor Torres announced the cut of government retirees' pension by 25% and also cut 25% of the public school system's general revenue. And that resulted in public school systems unable to make payroll for all their locally funded employees. So essentially a payless payday. And prior to all of this, these directives, the administration had implemented a 72-hour austerity measure for government employees after Super Typhoon Yutu had hit. So again, Super Typhoon Yutu hit in October 2018, and then this 72-hour austerity measure came in. I know that when that 72-hour austerity measure came in, and as I was there, this has always been a question, and I know I was only on the island for a year and a half, but it was a question of where is this Community Benefit Fund? And it's something that I know yourselves as lawmakers have continued to ask. I know the public has asked, but we've never really received an answer on that. Or anything in full, really. So back in 2015, after Typhoon Cotero had swept away the lone tourism industry that the local economy heavily depended on, in an immediate response for revitalization, the CNMI government, they swiftly adopted this casino license agreement and then introduced the gaming industry. And that brought in the Chinese casino company, Imperial Pacific International. It came into play, and the gaming industry was then introduced on the island. And since its inception, the casino license agreement law had been amended a few times. I know that while I was on island, like I mentioned, because I was reporting there, I think it was amended at least 3 times within that year and a half that I was there. And then prior to that, there was about 5 other amendments, 4 or 5. So we know it's been close to 10 times there's been amendments made to that casino license agreement. However, one part under the casino license agreement, under Section 16, it mandates, and I quote, "The licensee shall annually contribute to the CNMI $20 million to be used for community benefit programs toward, amongst others, education, scholarships, infrastructure, healthcare, employee retirement benefits." And further, the agreement says the fund is under IPI CNMI's control, so the casino's control, until the governor selects the project or programs for the fund distribution. So as I mentioned, the CNMI Legislature minority members, you guys have repeatedly questioned the administration throughout the years on where the whereabouts are of the fund. And as the pandemic has continued to spread across the globe and has hit the shores of the CNMI, this is another question that you guys have continued to ask. And if anything, it's just become a more pressing issue and a more pressing question. So in the beginning of the year, I believe it was, yeah, I think it was like the second week of January that you guys sent an Open Government Act request to the CNMI Office of the Governor and Office of Finance. And I think you recently, I believe just in speaking with you, Tina, you recently received some responses. I think it was only about 13-page response though, from what I could tell. So in regards to all that background information, I know it was a lot, but is there anything that I missed that you guys want to add into the background information on that community benefit fund? And then we'll go into what the response was that you received.
Right. So I just had a couple of quick clarifications. So the background that you provided on all the various cuts that the governor has announced was right. And the one thing that needs to be clarified for PSS is that actually the administration has notified PSS that there will be no further transfers of funds to the public school system at all for the rest of the fiscal year.
At all.
So it's not just a 25% cut. They're saying that PSS has already received that 25% of the total budget, which is constitutionally mandated. And that still hasn't, that's a question that hasn't been resolved yet. There is an injunction hearing that is coming up. But the notice that we've seen from the administration is that there will be no more money going to PSS for the rest of the fiscal year. So, and then the 25% cut to retirees' pensions you got, right? And then the approximately 50% cut in projected resources for the rest of the year, that is right. And the governor has said that furlough and termination notices should be coming out this week. So, so that's to clarify that. The Casino Act, the Saipan Casino Act actually passed before the typhoons. As you might recall, it passed in 2014, and there have been, as you noted, multiple amendments since then. But it was before Typhoon Sotalor, and passed, I would note, without a committee report, without a public hearing. It was passed very quickly after a number of all-expense paid trips by lawmakers to Hong Kong and Macau. And so here we are today. And you said there have been close to 10 amendments. I think we're at number 8 now since the license agreement was first approved. Right. And part of one of the amendments or a couple of the amendments had to do with the community benefit fund, which is, Section 16 is a contractual obligation of IPI to the Commonwealth, but that contractual obligation, that contract, the governor is a party to that contract, and both the Lottery Commission and the Casino Commission have indicated that he has enforcement authority over that contract, including Section 16. So, and actually, our Open Government Act request with respect to the Community Benefit Fund, that was actually sent to the governor at the end of February, on or about February 28th, and under the Open Government Act, he had 10 days to respond, and so we received the response. Within, his office actually did comply with the request, and we received the documents. There were actually about 58 different documents, all, different types of documents that were turned over in response to the request, and we got that just before the government shut down. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know you forwarded me the response that you received, and I saw it was 13 pages, but I don't think you sent me all the emails that were within those, right?
No, so what I sent you was we scanned all of the records and onto this Google Drive, and so there's the letters the one that we sent, and then the response letter, and then his response came with all these attachments, and so the attachments are like 58 different documents. Okay. Some are actually duplicates, but it was more than 13 pages. Just
okay. So 58 pages. So then within those 58 pages, can you tell us?
58 documents.
Oh, 58 documents. Yes. So within those documents, what did you find within the fund? How much were there any numbers that were shown of how much money has been spent, or what it has been spent on, and how much is in the fund still?
Right. So under the casino license agreement, IPI was required to contribute $10 million to the community benefit fund in January 2018, another $10 million in June 2018, and then $20 million starting in October 2019 And every year after that, we should be getting $20 million in contributions from the Community Benefit Fund, according to the license. And so to date, we should have some record of $40 million in contributions that could go to education or healthcare or the retirement fund or any number of these public benefits that are listed in the casino license. And according to the governor's records, they can only account for $1.2 million in distributions that went to 4 programs in 2018. And there are no records of any other distributions after that.
So 4 programs.
Yeah.
And it was 1.2 million that went to 4 programs. Otherwise,
records that we got. Yes.
So otherwise, the records did not present anything else in regards to the remaining 38.8, right? 38.8 million.
Right. Right. There are lots of requests that were submitted by various organizations to the governor, proposals that the governor submitted to IPI, but in terms of actual documentation where we saw like receipts and copies of checks written by IPI to these organizations, we really just found documentation for $1.2 million for 4 programs in 2018.
And so we don't know if, or I remember you telling me that you reached out to the governor's general counsel and asked him if there were any additional information or any other documents to present, and he said that was all there was that he had.
Right. So, we had sort of anecdotal information about other organizations that may have received funds, and in fact, like the governor's wife, the First Lady's Foundation, issued a press release that indicated that they had received some funds at least a couple of years ago, and there were no records from the governor's office that we received. And so, there's sort of, we had information like that. And when I reached out to the governor's counsel and asked, is this really all that you have? And I specifically mentioned the First Lady's Foundation. I said, there was this press release, like I was looking right at it when I called him, and he said that what he gave us, what the governor's office gave us, was all the records that they had. And that was all that he would say about that.
Now, Representative Probst, I think, are you on mute?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Okay.
So I know that right after these cuts were made, the more recent cuts were made, you mentioned this community benefit fund and how it could come into aid. Can you just explain and elaborate on that, on what you spoke on? Because I know you went public on your Facebook, and you had, I remember reading, there was this one quote that it really stuck with me, but you said the sad thing is that a lot of people are going to have sleepless nights wondering if they have a job. And we know that some of these people in the CNMI, as of right now, aren't even living out of their houses still. They're still in tents following Super Typhoon U2. So right when the 50% cuts across the board was made, that they were asking for, governor had directed the heads to give him a list of positions for termination. You came out. Can you tell us how the Community Benefit Fund would be a relief?
Well, thank you, Adriana. The Community Benefit Fund, of course, is something that we've been discussing long before this COVID-19 pandemic, well before U2 ever even existed. And we've been calling for accountability, an audit, and more information on it as to where this money is going. Sadly, there's only a few of us, the minority, that have been asking for this time and time again. And it's sad that we are being ignored. The administration continues to say nothing about it, which is really frustrating, because as Congresswoman Tina had pointed out, the actual documentation that we were able to see from the 50-some pages that were given to us reflected only a tithing of what we should have seen, which was about, as was mentioned, about $1.4 million total. And in an actual audit that was released by Deloitte and Touche of IPI with regard to the Community Benefit Fund, it said about $3 million. But of that $3 million that was supposedly spent, we still haven't seen anything. Where exactly did that go to? So even with that $3 million, we still don't know how it was spent. But what we do know is that there should be at least 30-some million in this community benefit fund that could go right now to benefiting our people. We're looking at, but it's amazing because Guam, you guys are our neighbors, part of our Marinas family, and right next door. We see that teachers are still getting paid. We see that, that there hasn't been a payless payday really for anybody, but it is dire straits right now. So we're having teachers that are waiting for payment and retirees. And there could never have been a better time than the present right now for this community benefit fund to come in, for the Governor Ralph Torres, to say, listen, we need to have some, have these teachers paid, have the 25% for retirees. Let's tap into this huge resource, the community benefit fund, because this should have been put into some kind of escrow, something that was just waiting to be spent on the community. And the fact is, it is not. So for anybody to say, well, we have to understand that these are very difficult times even for IPI. Well, this was something that was supposed to have been taking place well before any of this happened, even before you two, as we mentioned earlier. So where is the money? Why aren't we able to tap into these resources? I just want to point out something right now with regard to the public school system. There was a huge battle between when the governor came out in a video and made statements that basically that the retirees, in order for them to get paid, this injunction has to be canceled. And it makes no sense because it isn't the PSS that took any money away from the retirees, because they're not getting any money. Let's just be very clear of that. And I also want to point out that if we look at, because we're always trying to look at ways that we can pay, if we get this community benefit fund right now, what PSS is owed right now immediately is about $1.9 million. So they only received 70% of their pay for, these are teachers and employees, for over the last two pay periods. So that's about $600,000. And then if they're to get paid in full for their last pay period, that would be $1.3 million. So a total of $1.9 million is needed. That is a fraction of the 37 million perhaps that we could expect from the community benefit fund. So again, this is a critical time that the governor really needs to step up and say, hey, look, IPI, you have a sole license and a monopoly here. It's time to pay up, or we have to look at another license.
Definitely. So would you guys say, I know that, and thank you so much, Tina, for clarifying all those points, because I know that this community benefit fund is something that takes so much research, because while I was on Saipan and working there, I would try and spend some of my extra time looking into it when I could, but it is a lot. And I know that you guys have put so much effort into even getting all these documents and even submitting the documents. And it's something that you guys have continued to follow and really, watch over throughout the years. But would you say that the casino license agreement was, I guess, passed and adopted pretty swiftly within the government and the administration in the wake of the Typhoon Cotero that did hit shortly after its introduction?
The casino license agreement was, it followed pretty quickly after the law was adopted, right? And I'd have to check back, but I think that predated the typhoons.
It did.
Even before Typhoon Cotero.
Well, it was the 18th, remember Public Law 1856.
Right.
And that was that legalized the casino.
And was the tourism industry down at the time whenever that was happening? The lone tourism industry, was that the push for entering or introducing the gaming industry?
Well, we were coming out of a long period of economic difficulties, even before. There were issues and just fiscal challenges, right? Like some of these are just structural problems that the government has been struggling with for a long time. But we were seeing improvements in the tourism industry before the Saipan Casino Act passed, and you know, they were slow and kind of incremental, modest, but, you know, not insignificant improvements in the industry. And then the Saipan Casino Act was passed very swiftly. The record is pretty clear about that. And you know, it is hard for people to keep track. I mean, it's hard for legislators to keep track of all the changes, and not just to the law, but to the license agreement. You know, can you imagine how difficult it is just for regular citizens too to keep up with what is owed to the Commonwealth? You know, and what did the people's representatives agree to? And are we getting that, right? Like, it's really hard to just keep track of all of that. So yeah, Can
I add something that the biggest lobbyists for the casino, actually probably what really pushed it through to pass in first and final reading and to really get it through, were the retirees. They were the greatest champions for the casino bill. And the reason for that was what they were putting into the bill, which would give a $15 million annual casino license, and that amount would go toward the retirees for their 25% that is not included in the settlement fund agreement. So the settlement fund agreement would only pay out retirees at a total of 75% of their original pension. So they needed an additional 25%, so those retirees would get paid that 100%. And it was estimated to be around $15 million and perhaps a little bit more. But that annual license was originally geared and being given to the retirees. And unfortunately, that was changed in the 20th legislature when House Bill 2099, introduced by Congressman Angel Demapon, took that away and essentially gave it to the senatorial districts to spend as they choose.
Yeah, I was something newer to me that I didn't even know about yet, because I've been looking into that. So thank you, Representative Probst, for bringing that up, because that is something that I had no idea on. And you know, right whenever I was in Saipan in around Christmas time, and I remember I had met with you, Representative Sablan, and you guys were saying that you were going to be sending in the Open Government Act request, and I reached out to IPI, and I typically, I mean, I did the year before too, asking about the fund, just like an update on how much money was in the fund. And so I did reach out, and they, I wanted to just share what they had told me, but they said that, and I spoke with Tao Ching, who's the IPI CNMI spokesperson, and he said that they continue to work diligently with the government to ensure the conditions are met and that the flow of financial support from the Community Benefit Fund to community programs has never stopped. And then he further stated that, and I quote, he said, "To date, there's still millions of dollars in the fund. Imperial Pacific will continue to support and protect the community's well-being by actively engaging and leading programs in the area of environment, destination enhancement, culture, education, and social services. So he had told me that, and then I asked him for a list of, recently, because of everything that's been unfolding since, I asked him for a list of what the fund has been used for in different programs, and he still has yet to get back to me on that list. And so then I went to CNMI Governor, Press Secretary Kevin Bautista, and said that I asked him for a list and asked him about how much money was in, and this was just within the past 2 weeks. And he told me that, and I also quote, he said that because of the tourism decline over the number of years, IPI CNMI has not been able to pay into the fund as they did in 2017. So then if one's saying that there is money and the other one's saying there isn't, so I'm just wondering who's supposed to hold IPI CNMI accountable to make this money, to put money into this fund, and then where is the money? I know that's the question that you guys have continued to ask.
Well, can I just say, ultimately, there's 4 words that we all need to be in unison in saying: show me the money, okay? Because regardless of how they try to spin it, and it is a spin, that is something that is still not accounted for. It's still not being really discussed, and they're always finding a way. You know, something that Tao Xing did not mention was that part of this community benefit fund could also benefit retirees. And what a critical time right now to benefit our retirees. What is to stop them? And however they try to spin it and say, well, the economy has taken a downturn, this was supposed to be deposited and put into toward helping our community before anything we've faced. So for them to say, well, you know, the economy is really bad right now. Okay, but it was good at the time. Why couldn't you have been making those payments? And also, who is really to be held to hold them accountable? Ultimately, by far, it is the highest elected office in the Commonwealth. That is Governor Ralph De Leon Guerrero Torres. Governor Torres must hold them accountable, and he has been silent on this issue for whatever reason we do not know. But it is frustrating that we cannot even have a discussion. It is frustrating that we haven't even used the legislature's subpoena powers to pull them in and hold them accountable, because we do have those powers for good reason. We have been getting nothing. The minority, as Congresswoman Tina Sablan has pointed out, and my colleague Congresswoman Sheila Babalta, we've had so many meetings in discussing this, and we are trying to do this to get answers for our people in a very desperate and difficult situation. We're not getting them. So we plead with the governor, please do your job. Hold them accountable, Governor.
Yeah, definitely. I have requested for an interview with Governor Ralph Torres. Actually, KUAM has requested since the first confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported on March 28th. And furthermore, I've been asking his press secretary, Kevin Bautista, for an interview in regards to the Community Benefit Fund, but I have yet to receive a response from him yet, or we have yet to get him on camera. I don't even think there's been a press conference yet since that first one on March 28th with Governor Torres, but that might be our only way of getting some answers in regards to this Community Benefit Fund. But has the, I know that you mentioned that, I know that the minority members, you guys have been talking about this, you guys meet and you talk about this, but has the legislature as a whole come together and discussed this at all? And are there any plans to have a joint session at all between the representatives and the Senate now that all these cuts are being made and the governor is having all these new directives? This is open.
Well, we haven't had any. We have been calling for a meeting of the members. I mean, part of the challenge, right, is the public health concern and the social distancing requirements. Senator Paul just this week called for a joint session or a back-to-back session. We have pushed for changes to the rules or, you know, the adoption of social distancing protocols that would allow us to meet without, you know, while minimizing public health risk. And we're still really waiting for the leadership to call a session and you know, for us to gather as a body, whether remotely or from our offices. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But I do want to just go back a little bit to the responses that you got, Adriana, from IPI and from the administration with respect to, you know, your inquiries. I mean, like both things can't be true. There can't be a flow of money that has never stopped and millions of dollars in the fund, and also no money in the fund, and IPI hasn't been able to contribute because the economy has been so bad. I think as our minority leader, Rep. Probst, noted, at least part of these obligatory contributions should have happened before Typhoon U2, January 2018, June 2018. Typhoon U2 happened in October 2018. And so, you know, if IPI is saying that the flow of money has never stopped and that there are millions in the fund, then they should show that. And I will note that the Office of the Public Auditor has been asked to conduct an audit of the Community Benefit Fund, and that they have requested these records from IPI since even before our Open Government Act request, the governor went out. And so that was It's in April. It was over a month ago, and IPI has not responded. And so, you know, like if the best way to show that they are complying and honoring not just the spirit, but the letter of that casino license agreement, which is a contractual obligation. And what we don't need from the administration are excuses for why they can't comply. What we need is enforcement. And the person who has enforcement authority, who is a party to that contract on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth, is the governor. And if the governor's office can't show that they've been keeping records or can't show that they've been making any effort at all to enforce this, but if IPI is saying that they have been complying, then they need to show that evidence. And we have also been pushing for the legislature to exercise its subpoena powers to get those records from IPI. We will continue to push for that. But there is nothing stopping IPI from complying with the OPA request and just releasing those records so that the public can see how has this community benefit fund actually been benefiting.
So they have not responded to OPA, you said, right?
To my knowledge, no. And I did just inquire a few days ago.
So Representative Babalta, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Hi. Yes. So, sorry, I just wanted to get your intake on all of this as well. You know, especially with these recent cuts that are happening, and as Representative Probst had mentioned, this would be one solution. The
Right.
community benefit fund
Right.
would be one solution. So I know that it's something that you guys as the minority members have come together and discussed. And what are your thoughts and your intake on this?
Well, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for showing interest and for having us on. You know, my colleagues and I feel very strongly about this, especially during this time. You know, you ask who is ultimately responsible, and we all do agree. I mean, per contract language, it is the governor's office. And really, we have been asking for information since the beginning of the term, really. We've written formal requests and letters. We've brought it up on record during sessions. You know, information is important, period. When it comes to making decisions, information is crucial, especially when it comes to information related to finances. And so, you know, the Community Benefit Fund is something of interest and priority to our community because it's supposed to directly benefit our community. So it has always been a topic of discussion among our constituents, and questions have always been raised regarding this account. And so, you know, although the governor's office is ultimately responsible for enforcing and ensuring payments are being made, I believe, and so does the minority, that as leaders in our community, it is also our responsibility to hold those accountable and push for transparency. So if we are expecting 38 million, right, to be in the fund today, where are the documents? If payments were not made, we need to know that too, right? If according to our calculations, it's supposed to be 38 million, but it's not there, then that's something we just need to know, especially now that we have furlough, you know, we have austerity measures, PSS cuts. I mean, the entire world is experiencing an economic just impact, right? And so right now, it's so important for us to gather all the information that we need to make responsible decisions. Mm-hmm. And we just need honest and accurate information. So in order for us to move forward, this is what we need right now. And, you know, it's honestly been very frustrating and unfortunate that response has been slow from the administration. And so we continue to push, you know, I mean, our minority leader, Rep. Tina Sablan, Donald Manglonia, Ed Villagomez, Rep. Richard Lizama, like we feel we are all on the same page with this, and we try to clearly communicate this to our community, that although, you know, we are often asked, why bring this up again? You know, is this really a good time to go after the casino? You know, we are going through a labor crisis. We have, you know, an upcoming recession. We're just getting out of austerity. Give them a chance to recover. You know, those are all valid points. what's important to note is, was the process, was there transparency and accountability in the process? And, the sharing of information is important, especially to your representatives, to your leaders. And like Rep. Tina Sablan said, if it's so difficult for us to get information, imagine, the average constituent who is trying to keep up with all these amendments, who is also wondering what's happening with the Community Benefit Fund, because there's supposed to be $40 million there. So, I'm really just grateful to be a part of the minority group. I feel like we know why we're asking these questions. We know exactly why we're asking these questions, and we just want to be able to clearly communicate that to our community, that we are working hard for you, for all of us, really. For our CNMI, we're working hard, we're asking the right questions, we're pushing the right agencies, and we're trying to just get information to help us be better leaders so that we can make better decisions.
Definitely.
Thanks,
so
Adriana.
going off of that, what you just said, I just want to ask two more questions real fast. But so we know that you said there was $1.2 million that went to 4 programs. Can you tell us what those programs were?
Sure. So one of those programs was CNMI Care, and they were overseeing the typhoon recovery effort after typhoon. So that CNMI Care, My Pros $1 Million Scholars, so that was like a scholarship program for high school students, high school graduates. And then there was a 50% down payment that went to Tinian Slaughterhouse. And the 4th one was a substance abuse and rehabilitation program.
Okay, thank you. And then also, oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. I did. I just wanted to add on to that and just provide the perspective that when MyPros, the Marianas Young Professionals, received that that funding from the Community Benefit Fund, I was on the board of the Marianas Young Professionals. And so, there's a lot of good that can happen, that can come out of this fund. And that's what happened with the Marianas Young Professionals. We were able to just send more of our students from the CNMI off to college, help them stay in college, help them return home and find jobs, and really create this pipeline for building capacity here in the CNMI. So we had that vision, right, of helping our students graduate, prep for college, experience the entire cycle of, attaining a higher education, coming home, entering the workforce, and then succeeding in their role as an educated, returning member of society. And so I just wanted to point that out, that I was on the board, and we did accept that donation, and good can come out of it. Mm-hmm. And so if there's 38 million sitting somewhere, a lot of good could have come out of that. If it's still sitting there, then that's what we need right now. And so I just wanted to provide that perspective on the Community Benefit Fund and receiving funding, especially at times when these organizations, we have a lot of great nonprofit organizations that, like Rep. Sablan mentioned, who have benefited from the fund and who do good work, who do good work and need the support. And so My Pros was one of them, and is still a very successful organization to date.
And I want to note also that My Pros, CNMI Care, and the substance abuse and rehabilitation programs did submit reports on the use of those funds. And so that's part of the record. That's how we know that they received these funds, and we can actually track how those funds were spent. All we have for the Tinian Slaughterhouse are some invoices and then like a wire transfer receipt that shows that 50% of the deposit have been received, or the down payment. And that's really all that's there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, at one point in January, on or before January 2018, the governor did write a letter to IPI proposing that as like a mechanism for accountability for the community benefit fund, that they deposit these funds into an escrow account, right? And that would assist the governor's office in monitoring the expenditures and ensuring compliance. And IPI in January 2018 complied, and part of the record includes a receipt for $12 million that was deposited in this bank account just for the community benefit fund. And what should have happened after that were additional receipts showing deposits for another 10 million that happened in June and another 20 million that happened in October. There is nothing like that in the record. And there is also nothing else beyond the 1.2 million donations that we did see. There's nothing else beyond that after 2018.
No records of any of that. Okay. So going off also of what you mentioned, how this information and sharing of this information helps lawmakers and helps you guys make responsible decisions, and how it's so needed, and even whether there's money or not, just knowing where it is and how and what to do next moving forward. And we know that recently the CNMI just did an emergency adoption of the Cannabis Act, and this is to essentially start the cannabis industry in the CNMI. What are your thoughts and your take on that? It's an emergency adoption because we know that tourism is down. We know the gaming industry is down. So this is building up on another industry. Are there any fears that it might result in what has happened with the gaming industry?
Who wants to take the lead on that?
Well, I can definitely comment on that. I think with any industry, it will take time to develop, right? The cannabis industry, I do support. I'm glad that we are moving forward with it. A lot of our community members have been just anxiously waiting for the implementation of the regulations. Do I think that it's going to save us? No, of course not. I think it'll definitely take time and take something bigger, and other major decisions and changes to be made, like major tax reform and restructuring of our government. However, I am glad that it is moving in the right direction, and that we are that we have adopted the regulations. There are so many other benefits of the cannabis industry, and including medicinal. And during this time when anxieties and depression and, a lot of mental illnesses are going to be affected during this health pandemic, I think that it can bring something positive to our community. On that note, I also want to stress that it is important, as with any industry, as with any government, regulation, accountability, and transparency are key. Communicating with your community is key. Keeping us in the loop, that's all key to the success of any industry. And so I just want to, reassure our community that that is something that your minority group definitely pushes for, because we believe that that only makes us stronger leaders. And so, so I am glad that it's rolling out. I'm glad that, we can look forward to the benefits of this new industry. But I also know that we need more than that. I also know that our leaders are also working on other options. We're looking at other solutions to really sustain our government, our people, and ensure that, the quality of life is still going to be at an okay level during this time and after the recovery of this pandemic. I mean, we can only imagine what it's going to look like afterwards. The economic recovery is going to be a lot of work. And so I think it's a good time for us to learn about, what went wrong, where we can improve, and how we're going to be better. And so our minority group is definitely always pushing that. We're always pushing accountability, transparency, communication, and integrity. So I am very proud to serve with my minority team.
Oh, ditto.
Can I add, Adriana and colleagues, that it is interesting that well before the election, we were always hearing the term the casino industry. It was very common. And now we're hearing we only have a tourism industry. It's almost like they're forgetting about the importance of this casino industry. And it is important to note that this casino industry at one time that was bringing in gross revenue taxes annually of over $50 million in 2019 only provided for $41,000 in total in their business gross revenue taxes. So I guess that's perhaps why they're not really talking about it as being an industry. We definitely need a diversified economy, and whether it's casino, cannabis, and other things, but we also, the minority has looked at the importance of agriculture, our agricultural industry, and supporting our local farmers. That's something that I know we could talk about at another time. But if we are looking at really helping our people, the local agricultural industry is something that is crucial in pushing for and supporting our local farmers. Wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and going back to your question about the cannabis industry, I'm also glad that the commission is moving forward with adopting, or has moved forward with adopting regulations. But I think that, as Representative Babalta has said, we should manage expectations and not expect that this will be the savior of the economy. It will take some time. We need to do a lot more public education about what these regulations actually say and require. And right now, I know that there was some hope that the connection. Can you hear me?
I think it's going in and out a little bit.
You're frozen.
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay. Well, anyhow, I know that there's some hope in tourism being an important factor with the cannabis industry's success, right? Like, tourists would come in and there would be recreational cannabis use, and that would be another source of revenue for folks here and for the government. And that is just not going to happen in the near future anyway. But we can start to develop the industry, start to educate people about the regulations, and businesses can start, or entrepreneurs can start to prepare. And then going back to what Representative Babalta said about just restructuring our government and looking at tax reform and economic policy reform, that is actually something that is in the works right now. And there is an effort now with all of the branches of government and also with the private sector to convene, at least virtually, a fiscal response summit that would look at the very dire fiscal challenges that we are facing as a community, and the difficult decisions that have to be made about how to address the deficit and some of the structural problems that we have allowed to go on for far too long, and then to build some consensus around a plan and the actions that we need to take as a community, and that will require a lot of commitment and action from both the executive branch as well as the legislature, and that should actually be happening within the next couple of weeks.
Well, I'll be checking in then for sure in the next few weeks. And then if I hear any responses, because I'm continuing to push on these questions in regards to the Community Benefit Fund, I will be sure to notify each and every single one of you, and then possibly do some more follow-ups.
Thanks. Can I just add on that, Adriana, that I know we've all heard that our world will never be the same after this pandemic. We're all learning so much, and we're all stepping out of our comfort zones when it comes to meeting online, or finding creative ways to get projects done and plan when it's really hard to do during this time of uncertainty. And so, you know, like Rep. Sablan was saying, we are trying to get the stakeholders, leaders, professionals in the field to come together during this economic forum. And, you know, in order for us to comply with physical distancing requirements, you know, we have to look at alternatives, right? Like a virtual meeting. And although that does take away, you know, it takes a lot away from an in-person meeting, right? I think that's also another reason why the House of Representatives, we have only met twice since the government shut down, and many are still trying to get used to these virtual platforms. However, I am optimistic that moving forward, I can totally see a time when we are effective and efficient and utilizing technology to its maximum capacity, especially out here in the CNMI, where when many of us return home, it feels like we're almost stepping back in time, right? When now many stores are encouraged to accept debit cards. When, you know, really just a couple months ago, there were establishments with cash only. And so there are so many ways that this pandemic will help us become a better government and a better CNMI. And I think that's something that we can all at least look forward to.
And before we wrap things up, I just real quick, because I know that this is also something that I think a lot of people have been following as well. Do you guys have any information on the federal investigation that was being done into Governor Torres as well as IPI CNMI? Any updated info as far as that?
Who wants to take the lead on this? I think probably Adriana. I mean, yeah, we haven't really heard anything since the raid. You know, we have heard that there have been other people caught in for interviews or who have been visited by federal investigators, but no, I mean, I think until we see indictments or anything else that would be a public record, I don't think any of us can really.
Right. I know that there was some documents that were unsealed through the court, you know, alleging some misuse of funds. So I just didn't know if there was anything further that has come out of that. But the other thing that I'll follow up on with the speaker as well.
And please let us know whatever you hear.
I will.
Yes, please.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you all for meeting with me and detailing all this information. I know it's a lot, but you guys have continued to press on it and follow it, and I really appreciate you taking the time to explain it all to me. And
thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
you for these issues and for giving this coverage, because it's important. So
we're grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and thank you all for tuning in. Again, that was, we have Representative Ed Probst, and we also have Representative Christina Sablan, and we also have Representative Sheila Babauta, members of the minority with the CNMI Legislature, and they were detailing the current financial crisis that the island are dealing with, and one solution for this economic recovery being the Community Benefit Fund. But the question still stands, where is the money? So I'm Adriana Cotero, and thank you all for tuning in.